That's not true. Stop. 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 No, stop. Stop. No, stop. Sorry, that was just the Freddy Fazbear voices in my head telling me I need to read the next 3 chapters of Five Nights at Five Nights at Freddy's at book. So that's what we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be reading this. Last night I read chapters 1. I read prologue. I read chapter 1, and I even read chapter 2, which should count as two. Should count as 3 chapters because the prologue was really, really long. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. We're gonna be reading this. I'm probably just gonna jump right into it. Yesterday, I kept trying to read. But I kept what the crap? But I kept not reading right. Like my brain just absolutely pooped itself. Is this public? Every single time I do this, it's always like, oh, you want this to be unlisted, right? You don't want anyone to see it. Ah, dang it, it is unlisted. So no one even saw what I just said. Hey, everyone who was not here before because the live stream was unlisted. Why? I put all this effort into making sure I'm doing something cool right at the beginning of the live stream. And then it's like, hey. What if your live stream was unlisted? Brainstorm with me here real quick. What if, just spitballing here, your live stream wasn't public and no one saw you for the first minute and you looked like an idiot? Anyway, this chapter is where we get to meet freaking Daniel Radcliffe. What's his name? Raglan. Steve Raglan, also known as Five Nights, also known as what's his name? Also known as Skibbity Toilet Killer. No, that's not right. What's his name? The purple thing. The purple one. I lost my place. I totally lost my place. Where was I? Okay. The purple guy. What's his name? Phone guy. Now, this is where we meet William Afton, is in this book. But we don't know it's William Afton yet. And you don't know it's William Afton yet. And Mike doesn't know it's William Afton yet. So, that's kind of the situation we got going here. The tall, slender man who leaned back casually in a cracked black vinyl office chair had the manner of someone presiding over an executive boardroom. In fact, the man presided over nothing but a cheap wood veneer top desk in a closet-sized windowless office. An even cheaper acrylic nameplate at the front of the desk announced that the man's name was Steve Raglan. Under Steve Raglan, the nameplate revealed that the man was a career counselor. Given Raglan's smug expression that clearly telegraphed his inflated self-opinion, Mike was sure the guy thought he was the best career counselor on the planet. And he was. He totally was. My name is Jeff. If anybody's just joining the chat, my name is Deez. If anyone's just joining the chat, my name is Jeff. Jeff Nuts. Freaking got him. Anyway, sorry, my bad. Sorry, I didn't mean to outburst like that. It was just right there. The joke was just right there. I could just say it. Anyway. Or maybe just the best person on the planet. Mike really, really wanted to punch the guy. 50ish with grayish dark hair, Raglan studied Mike with narrow eyes, magnified and controlled by thick, round, black rimmed glasses. The eyewear dominated a thinnish face topped by a high forehead. Raglan flashed Mike a grin. The grin was toothy and looked more like a grimace than a smile guy's grimace shake. I'm just giving you pictures because my copy doesn't have pictures. So you're welcome. So, Mr. Schmidt, Raglan said, what's your deal? Huh. Raglan's gaze ran up and down the length of Mike as if Raglan was sizing up a cow before its trip to the slaughterhouse. Huh. Raglan continued to recline in his chair. One of the large feet was propped against the ugly, scarred desk. The foot waggled as if Raglan was keeping time with a tune that only he could hear. Well, Mike, Raglan asked, mind if I call you Mike? He's going to say, you can call me D's nuts. Friggin' got him. I got you again. You didn't even realize that. We're just reading a stupid book, and I got you with D's nuts. Are you stupid? Are you gullible? I got you with D's nuts. That came out like 500 years ago, and you got tricked by D's nuts. Anyway, Mike shrugged. He didn't care what this guy called him. He didn't care what this guy had to say either. Anything Raglan said would be annoying. The man had a grating voice, alternatively raspy and nasally, then smooth and sing-song. It was as if Raglan couldn't figure out who he was or what he wanted to sound like. But what I've never seen a paragraph open with but whatever. Mike didn't care about why Raglan sounded the way he did. All Mike wanted to do was get this meeting over with. So what are you, Mike? Raglan asked. Some kind of head case? Raglan used his waggling foot to push off the desk. He straightened his chair and leaned forward, propping his elbow on the beige felt blotter that held a single manila file folder and a red coffee mug, which appeared to be empty. The folder was the only one on Raglan's desk. Other than an old lamp-line phone and an empty metal mesh inbox, the desk looked like it was never needed for any actual work. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. I like to beat up dads, Raglan said. Is that who you are? Mike stared at Raglan. Not only was the man saying nothing he had expected to hear. I'm stupid. Not only was the man saying nothing Mike had expected to hear, there was something off about him. Mike's nose twitched. Maybe it was the guy's odor. Mike couldn't place it. It wasn't sweat or anything like that. It wasn't cologne or food. It was something musky. Something that made Mike think of the damp basement in his childhood home. He never liked going down into that basement, and he didn't like Raglan either. Raglan didn't seem to care for Mike's remained mute. You attack a man in broad daylight, Raglan said. Mike's inner eye replayed the fight in the food court fountain. He felt the cold water, tasted the coppery blood. Mike licked his lips and stayed silent. And then that's like so you can internalize it and visualize it in your head. Anywho, in front of his own child, Raglan went on. Mike's memory took him back to the fountain again. He remembered the pressure of Jeremiah's arm around his shoulder. Mike! Jeremiah had shouted in Mike's ear. Come on, Mike! Mike had fought against Jeremy, as his gaze had searched for the little boy he'd just rescued. Then Mike had heard the boy scream, "Daddy!" Still holding his penguin, the boy had scrambled into the fountain to reach the man Mike was attacking. That's when Mike had finally let Jeremiah pull him away. That was the only way I was going to say that in the most normal way possible. This book is not meant to be read out loud. It's way too funny. This book is a comedy and it's not real. This book right here, it's not real. When I snap my fingers, you will forget. One has to wonder, Raglan said, tearing Mike from the shameful memory. What would possess a person to act that the way you did? Mike looked down at his hands, which were trembling together against his churning stomach. It was a misunderstanding, Mike said. I gotta not be laughing for this. It was a misunderstanding, Mike said. I thought that. Yes, Raglan interrupted as he opened the folder in front of him. There's a note here. He tapped the page in the file. Given your unique history, he tapped on the top of the page in the file. Nope, that's just not what the book says. I don't know what I just read. Given your unique history, I understand how you could have made that mistake. But that's not the whole story of Mike Schmidt, is it? Raglan flipped through a few pages of Mike's file. He paused and cleared his throat. Tapping a page, he read, Tire Zone Sales Associate, 2 months. Employment termination for cause insubordination. Media World, custodian staff, 1 week. Fired because of a... Raglan leaned over the page and read even more slowly. Generally unpleasant disposition. Raglan looked up. 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 Coffee? What? Mike said. The non sequitur caught him off guard. Would you like some coffee? Raglan asked. Mike couldn't process the request. How had they gone from a walk down memory lane of his failures to a friendly offer of coffee? All Mike could do was stare at Raglan. Coffee. Wow. Coffee. Anyway. Raglan shrugged. Shut up. Raglan shrugged and pushed out of his chair. He grabbed the red mug and took 2 steps to a coffee maker that sat on top of the gray filing cabinet in the corner of the office. Mike hadn't noticed the coffee maker. He hadn't noticed the aroma of the coffee either. He'd been too distracted by the acrid odor that seemed to emanate from Raglan. Mike Schmidt in his chair to look at Raglan's shoes. Mike shifted Mike shifted his chair to look at Raglan's shoes. Had the man stepped in something that was causing the stench? Mike couldn't tell. Raglan wore scuffed brown loafers. They didn't appear to be stained. Raglan poured his coffee, and Mike finally caught the nutty scent of the brew. Raglan tore open a pack of sugar and added that to his mug. He didn't bother to stir it. Instead, he turned and looked at Mike. I'll be honest with you, Mike, Raglan said. Given your track record, your options are extremely limited. I don't know if this is like meant to be read in like the same suspicious tone as it is in the movie. Like he finally knows who Mike Schmidt is. or if it's meant to be read kind of like "Days Nuts," like that sort of thing. I don't know. It could be one or the other. Um, Mike made a face. Time to grovel. I'll take anything, Mike said. Any job you have. Even so, Raglan said. He lifted his mug and took a sip of his coffee. He smiled and closed his eyes briefly, as if savoring the flavor. Mike resisted the urge to squirm with impatience. He watched Raglan amble back to his desk chair. Let's say I put you up for, I don't know, let's say a dishwashing job, Raglan said. Next thing, I'm getting a phone call telling me you tried to drown the fry cook in the sink with all the dirty dishes. Raglan set down the mug and tapped it with his index finger. The dull, clunking sound made Mike realize that it was oddly quiet in Raglan's room. Even though the Raglan's office, sorry, even though the adjacent offices were occupied by other social workers and the people who needed help. The nearby conversation sounded a little more than a swishy sort of roar, like the distant crash of ocean waves. Raglan leaned forward and nailed Mike with a look so severe that Mike was tempted to lean away. Raglan's superior, jovial air seemed to morph Raglan's superior, jovial air seemed to morph into something else, something almost threatening. That would be very bad for me, Mike, Raglan said. Very bad. Not to mention the poor fry cook. Raglan leaned back, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Joviality returned. New word unlocked. Joviality. I can't freaking recover from these jokes super quickly because I always lose my space in the book. I can say D's nuts. Actually, where the crap was I? What's going on? I think I may need to restart the entire book because I have no idea what's happening. He's screwing with me, Mike thought. But what could Mike do about it? Nothing. All he could do was return to groveling. That's Mike groveling. That's Mike groveling. I'm not a violent person, Mike said. I'm sure you're not, Raglan said. The words were dripping in sarcasm. I'm sure you're not. Raglan's mouth quirked. Mike clenched his fist. He was seconds away from providing his last statement to be a lie. This man seriously needed to have the pompous expression beaten out of his freaking face. I can tell this is hard for you, Mike, Raglan said. Mike saw the twinkle in Raglan's eye. The guy was seriously enjoying baiting Mike. Being here, Raglan continued. You don't like it, do you? Mike didn't bother to respond. You strike me, Raglan went on, as someone who'd rather, I don't know, dig their own eyes out with a spoon than ask for help. Mike stood up. You know what? Forget this. Mike started to turn away from Raglan's desk. I think I have something for you, Raglan said. Mike rotated his head back toward Raglan, but he remained standing. Come on, Raglan said. I like to make jokes. A little levity threatens the mood. Why don't you sit down? Mike crossed his arms and looked down at the idiot behind the tacky desk. You think you have something? Mike asked. Raglan tilted back his chair. It's a security gig, he said. Full disclosure, it's not great. High turnover is what we in the business call it. High turnover is what we in the business call it. But you'd get to be your own boss, sort of, and you'd really only have to worry about one thing. Mike waited. He suspected Raglan was still toying with him. All you have to do is keep the place tidy, Raglan finally said, and keep people out. That's two things, Mike said. A muscle twitched at the right corner of Raglan's eye. The right side of his jaw bulged briefly. That's what it feels like to be messed with, Mike thought. Deal with it. Are you interested? Raglan asked. Mike shifted his feet. He tentatively allowed himself to feel a little anticipation. How's the pay? Raglan snorted. What do you think? Not good, and the hours are worse. Mike's anticipation dissolved into disappointment. Bad hours meant nights. I can't do Mike's. I can't do. Oh my gosh. I can't do nights, Mike said. Raglan cocked his head. I'm sorry? I can't do nights, Mike repeated. Raglan picked up his mug and took a long, noisy slurp of coffee. Mike inhaled the smell of coffee beans, but wrinkled his nose when he once again caught the strange scent that wafted from Raglan himself. Why can't you do nights? Raglan asked. Mike wasn't about to try to explain his situation to Raglan. It wasn't the man's business, it was personal. So Mike said nothing. Silence grew into such a commanding presence that it felt like a third person had stepped into the room. Raglan attempted to stare down Mike. Mike held the man's gaze and didn't move a muscle. Raglan finally gave in. Shame, he said. Raglan reached out and pulled open his desk drawer in front of his lean stomach. He rummaged in the drawer. Mike heard a clatter, a rustle, and a metallic thud. A clatter, a rustle, and a metallic thud. Finally, Raglan plucked out a business card. He held it over the desk. In case you have a change of heart, he said. Mike didn't want to take the card. All he wanted to do was get out of there. But Mike wasn't in a position to burn bridges. He took the card. Then he stomped out of Raglan's office. End of scene. Scene 2. It's not the end of the chapter. It's just the end of this scene in this chapter. This chapter's a little long. We don't have much, though. We're about halfway through it. After Mike had left Raglan's office, he'd gone on his own job hunt. Who needed Raglan? Mike could find his own job. Or maybe not. By the time Mike gave up and headed toward home, the oppressive gray clouds were being consumed by a night that seemed to be in a big hurry to take over. Even though the day still held on to some light, the sun was nowhere to be seen. Just as well, Mike wasn't in the mood for sun. This kid needs to needs to cheer up. Come on, dude. He's bumming me out. As Mike turned the corner onto the street, his old sedan backfired. The car launched, and Mike had to stomp on the gas to keep the car from stalling out. Man, he hated this car. An amalgamation of old parts from the junkyard. Mike's car might have been the ugliest vehicle on the road. If he hadn't been so grateful to have something, anything, with wheels and an engine, he'd have been embarrassed to be seen in the thing. But then again, Mike wasn't really that easily embarrassed. This guy just doesn't feel anything. It's like every single scene they have, it's like Mike, if Mike got a job, he would feel happy. Then again, Mike Schmidt doesn't feel happy. And I'm like, I know, you don't have to like clarify that and after every single sentence. So this book gets a 0 stars out of 10 stars. Sorry, Scott Cawthon. Sorry, Matthew Lillard. I know you guys worked really hard on this book, but 0 stars. 0 stars. Sorry. 0 stars. Anyway, what? Anyway. Oh, man. When you carried around the kind of regret that he hauled everywhere he went, the usual things that embarrass people didn't make a dent. Take the neighborhood Mike lived in, for instance. The bedraggled streets of little more than shacks were considered to be that part of town. Originally built as makeshift housing for the dirt poor immigrants brought in to work in the town's factories, the petite houses when hadn't been much when they'd been put up. Now they were even less. All the houses on the streets were essentially identical, give or take the variety of faded colors and various old cars, lawn equipment, toys, and other junk piled around them. Mike and Abby's house was yellow, or at least it used to be. It was more tan than yellow now because it was so dirty. The shallow roof, originally black, was fuzzy with green moss. Like many of the houses on the street, Mike's place had no front lawn. All it had was a collection of weeds and the ever widening oil stain that Mike's car added to every day. Mike turned into his so called driveway, a dirt and gravel expanse that held said oil stain. He turned off his car, and the engine coughed several times before expiring for the night. As soon as the engine went silent, Mike pulled the key from the ignition, but he didn't move. Sometimes Mike got stuck in the moment. He couldn't convince himself that moving on to the next thing was worth his trouble. Bro, same. I do that sometimes. Sometimes I sit in my car after I get home and after I park, and I just think, God, did I miss out on it? Is the Peter Griffin skin in Fortnite still? Did I miss out on it? Anyway, my laptop's about to die. I need to get my charger. In case you guys didn't know, I'm actually live streaming this on my laptop, which is actually pretty cool. So that's neat. We have spoon. You guys get to see the book. How about next time you guys read the book to me? Because this is really boring. Anyway, no, it's really cool. It wasn't that Mike was suicidal or anything. He wasn't ready to meet his maker. He wasn't even remotely ready for that accounting. But Mike often wished life came with timeouts or maybe freeze frames. It would have been helpful to have a remote so he could stop time and catch his breath. Nearby, an engine revved. The sound kick-started Mike again. He opened his car door, got out, and loped up to his front porch. Gosh, I love loping places. That's probably my favorite way to get around is to lope places. God, sometimes I just lope up to McDonald's and then I just lope up right back home because I just love loping places. That's got to be top 10 transportations of all times. I just love loping. Anyway, I need to keep my finger where I am. He loped up to his front porch, if you could even call it that. Only a 3-foot square rise of concrete under the minuscule overhang led to a door with peeling, dirty white paint. A red sheet of paper was taped to the door. Mike grabbed the rusty doorknob with his right hand. With his left hand, he tore the paper off the door. He knew he didn't need to look at it, but he did anyway. It was like goggling at a car wreck. Sometimes it was impossible to turn away from foulness. The paper said exactly what Mike expected it to say. Notice of delinquency. Tell me something I don't know, Mike muttered as he stuffed the paper in the pocket of his wrinkled black slacks and opened his front door. Why do books describe you how the person is saying something after they've already said it? I think that's got to be one of the stupidest things ever. Because even if you're reading it in your head, you still want to have that like tone in your head when you're reading it, right? So, like, I said, tell me something I don't know. I just said that out loud. But later in the next words are Mike muttered. Like, why couldn't you tell me Mike muttered, tell me something I don't know? As he stuffed the paper in his pocket of his wrinkled black slacks and opened the front door. Like I understand that he mutters something now that you told me. but I already freaking said the phrase that you wanted me to say, and I don't know that it was supposed to be muttered. Anyway, that's kind of stupid. Books get a 0 out of 10. Sorry, book. I know Scott Cawthon and Matthew Lillard worked really hard on you guys, but I'm sorry. I have to give it a 0 out of 10. This is so weird. Anyway, Maxine heard Mike's car pull up from the front of the house. How could she not? The beater needed a new muffler. Among us. Among us. This says among us, probably. I think it actually does say among us. I'm restarting this. Maxine had heard Mike's car pull up in front of the house. How could she not? The beater needed a new muffler, among 100 other things. When the engine's thunderous sputter had gone silent, Maxine had waited to hear the car door slam. When it didn't, she knew that Mike's day hadn't gone well. If only Maxine could comfort him. Maxine snorted and turned up the sound on Mike's TV. The TV was an old analog set, one with truly crap reception. Continuous wiggles of static wormed across the screen, no matter what channel you were on. Maxine currently was watching QVC. She liked QVC. When Mike had teased Maxine with her addiction to the shopping channel, she pretended his words hadn't bothered her at all. Maxine was good at pretending. I feel like a 5-year-old trying to read this. Maxine was good at pretending. She pretended that his words hadn't bothered her at all. Nonchalant was her go-to defense mechanism. When you wore a bored expression, moved languidly, and kept your words few, as apathetic as possible, no one knew what you were actually thinking or feeling. It made for good armor. Maxine could never be hurt because she pretended that she was hurt-proof, or at least that's what she told herself. Maxine finally heard Mike's car door slam in front. Maxine finally heard Mike's car door slam as her favorite hostess introduced the next product, a silver ring with an emerald cut cubic zirconia stone. The ring was one in a line of affordable jewelry design by the other woman on the screen, an ex-actress who probably now made more money selling rings and bracelets and necklaces than she'd ever earned from her B-movie roles. Why is this important? It's for the lore. You got to understand that. You can't understand Five Nights at Freddy's until you understand that this ex-actress made rings and bracelets now. All right, you're not going to understand who Golden Freddy is if you don't know that this unnamed ex-actress made rings and also bracelets and sold them on television in the 2000s. You're not going to understand who the puppet is. You're not going to understand what Lefty is if you don't know this stuff. The books are so important, guys. Anyway, both the hostess and the ex-actress had hair and fake tans, but Maxine didn't mind that. The superficial fakery was part of QVC's appeal for Maxine. She enjoyed watching others put the same kind of "don't look at me" show. She enjoyed watching others put on the same kind of "don't look at me" show that she did. That is just an awesome sentence to read. I'm so grammatically stimulated right now because of how awesome that freaking sentence was. It's not every guy can afford a real diamond, the hostess said. So it's awesome that you created this line of cubic zirconia engagement rings. Isn't it? The ex-actress responded ever so humbly. This particular ring is one of my favorites. Even though Maxine watched QVC obsessively, she didn't like it all that much. She didn't like all that much of what the channel hawked. Tua. The ring on the screen, for instance, was gaudy in the extreme, and its price tag was laughably high. At only $79.99, the hostess said The ring is a bargain. It's worth less than a wad of tinfoil, Maxine said. It's worth. I gotta get into Maxine character. It's worth less than a wad of tinfoil, Maxine said to the hostess on screen. Mike came through the front door, and Maxine quickly affected a bored, I don't give a crap about anything posture. Already reclining, she let her lids fall half closed, and she made sure her feet were drooping over the edge of the sofa's sagging mustard yellow cushions. She quickly arranged the black shirt she wore with faded jeans so it revealed just the right amount of cleavage. We got boobs. We got boobs in Five Nights at Freddy's. You're telling me there's boobs in Five Nights at Freddy's? You're telling me there's boobs in this? Oh, oh no! There's boobs in Five Nights at Freddy's. There's boobies in Five Nights at Freddy's. No, there's boobies in it. No! Oh, no! Bro, it is late. I need to finish this chapter. In her mind's eye, Maxine assessed the picture she made. A slender 5'5" Maxine was petite enough to look a lot more feminine and helpless than she was. Gross? Sometimes that annoyed her, but sometimes she liked to make it work for her. With large, wide spaced eyes and high cheekbones. Why do I care about this? Maxine knew she was attractive enough. She had long, dark hair that was thick and shiny. Guys went for that, or at least most guys did. Dude, this guy is this Mike isn't like a chick magnet. The one guy that Maxine cared about stepped into the shabby stamp-sized living stamps. just a tiny little living room. Yeah, do you this house has is located in a beautiful neighborhood. It has a fantastic large lawn. I love that. The back porch especially um, is fantastic, and the pool deck is absolutely a must. But does it have like a stamp sized living room? Does it have like a living room that's like this big? But I everything about the house is perfect, and we're definitely probably going to go for it. But does it have like a living room that's like this big? Does it have a living room that's this big? Does it have a living room that's this big? And it has one of those little mouse holes that you can get in, and the living room is this big. Does that have one? It hurts me to say, but that's kind of like we have no deal if there's no stamp size living room. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This house just isn't for us. I'm sorry. What? Anyway, stamp sized living room. Maxine gave him a limp wave. Not a care in the world. Doesn't matter at all that you don't see me. Maxine had given a lot of thought as to why Mike was immune to her charms. Ha! Charms. But hey, Maxine wasn't ugly, and she was only a few years younger than Mike. She wasn't dumb or obnoxious or anything. That's subjective. In fact, she was smarter than Mike. Okay. She was taking social sciences at community college, and sometimes she even read a book for fun in between marathon sessions of QVC watching. People who read books for fun are lame. I'm doing this for money. Do you see how many super chats I'm getting? Look how many super chats I'm getting every single minute. I don't read books for fun, I read them for money. That's what's going on here. Hey, Max, Mike said. Maxine tried to ignore the way her shoulders tightened when Mike used her nickname. Gross. She'd been trying to wean people off that name for years. She didn't want to be Max. She wanted to be Maxine, not tomboy trailer trash. Sophisticated woman. But Maxine wasn't catching on. To everyone but herself, Maxine was Max. There's Stofers, Maxine said. to Mike. Now, here's the thing. Stouffer's is a spectrum, right? Similar to autism or like the gender spectrum. Stouffer's is a spectrum. If you get the like steak with mashed potatoes, I'm kind of going to look at you a little funny. You know, it's nothing personal, but like if you get that, then I'm kind of gonna look at you like this. Like personally, I don't I don't want to like microwave steak, right? I don't really want to do that. I don't know if you can do it in the oven. Um, you might be able to, and it might be really good. I just personally don't like meals like that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you got Stouffer's lasagna. Holy moly, Stouffer's lasagna is really good. And it's delicious, and I want to eat it every single day. And I can't eat Stouffer's lasagna every day. I can't eat Stouffer's lasagna every day. I can't. And I want to so bad, and I can't eat Stouffer's lasagna every day. I want to eat Stouffer's lasagna so bad. Anyway, Maxine told Mike, should still be warm if you're hungry. Mike dropped into the red vinyl seat on one of the chrome chairs next to the small tan formica covered kitchen table. He looked toward the small gas stove tucked between an old squat fridge and the inadequate bit of counter that surrounded a dingy white porcelain sink. Maxine had left half of microwave half of the microwave lasagna in a plastic pan on top of the stove. Let's freaking go. They got Stouffer's lasagna and Five Nights at Freddy's. Let's freaking go. I'm so excited. They did microwave it though. It's pretty weird. Pretty weird. Don't microwave lasagna. That's my hot take. Don't microwave lasagna. Wait. Literally cook it in an oven. It takes like 45 minutes. Did Abby eat? Mike asked. Maxine swung her legs around off the sofa and raised eyebrows at Mike. That's what happened. What do you think? Mike gave Maxine a half grin. Something about the grin got past Maxine's normal defenses. Her gaze landed on the ugly ring on the TV, and she sighed. Before she could think about what she was saying, she blurted, I wish someone would buy me a ring. It actually doesn't say that at all. It actually says these nuts. I'm sorry, I made that up. Sorry. Mike said nothing. Immediately mortified at her slip, Maxine stood up, switched off the TV, and picked up her jacket, an old black leather backpack, from the end of the sofa. Keeping her face turned away from Mike, Maxine said, Abby's been in her room all evening. She's yakking away with those friends of hers. Maxine glanced at Mike in time to see his frown. She hurriedly went on. She's getting really good, by the way, at drawing. Mike grunted as he pulled a crumpled piece of red paper from his pocket. Maxine knew what it was. She was surprised he'd been reading it. Maxine crossed the few feet from the sofa to the kitchen table. She paused behind Mike and looked down at him. She liked being this close to him. He smelled really good, not sweet like cologne or anything. He smelled like a man, just clean and simple. Man smell. Y'all should get a dog, Maxine said. A big mean one. Chain him outside. Mike looked up. The skin crumpled between his brows. Huh? Maxine pointed at the delinquency notice. We used to get those too, she said. Then we got Bonesy. Proof. No more notices. The furrows between Mike's brows deepened. Are brows eyebrows? I don't think I've ever heard brow before. I might be an idiot. Brow. It's just a person's forehead? Oh, wait, no, the summit of hill or pass. Okay, that makes a lot more sense because I was like, brow. This sounds like the summit of a hill or pass, but that's what they're talking about, actually. So whenever I say brow, they're talking about a hummet, of a hill or pass. What the crap? They're talking about a hill or pass, the summit of a hill or pass, or a forehead. It probably isn't forehead. This joke isn't funny. Anyway. The furrows between Mike's brows deepened, but otherwise his expression didn't change. I'll keep that in mind, he said. Maxine shrugged. Miss, who cares? She headed towards the front door. Just before she reached for the doorknob, she stopped and spun back to look at Mike. I almost forgot, she said. Your aunt called. Mike made a snorting sound. Something about lawyers? Oh my gosh, I hate this. I hate reading. Mike snorted. Something about lawyers and you'd be able to be there tomorrow or something else? Maxine went on. Mike dropped his head into his hands. Maxine stared at his long fingers and the twitch and the thick and the thick hairs between them. Her hand twitched, wanting so much to reach out, and Maxine got a grip of herself. She turned back towards the door. Well, see ya, she said as she opened it and stepped outside. She tried not to let it bother her that Mike didn't say goodbye. Chapter 3. That was chapter 3. I give chapter 3 3 chapters out of 5. How many chapters 3 is in chapter 4? Okay, there's only about like 5 chapters in chapter 4, so only about 5 chapter 3s in chapter 4. So I think we're going to try to knock this out. Mike waited for the door to close. He listened to Max's footsteps tap across the concrete porch. As soon as he was sure she was gone, he clenched his fist and squeezed his eyes closed so hard that his entire body trembled. Mike clasped his mouth closed too. If he hadn't, he was sure he'd have screamed. A wail of desperate and frustration and fury was churning in his chest, and it took everything he had not to let it come roaring out, leaping up his throat like a lion finally freed from a cage. Gazing at the delinquency notice, Mike thought about his aunt's message, or else Mike knew what it meant. Damn his Aunt Jane. I did not read that right. Damn his Aunt Jane. Damn his Aunt Jane. What does damn mean? I knew I wasn't allowed to say it, but a barrier built across a river or stream to stop or restrict the flow of water. That's not right. No, it's like a curse word. Oh, damn with an M. No, with an N. Right? Right? I'm not. How do you. A ring-shaped reef, island, or chain of islands formed of coral. Okay, that makes sense. Damn his Aunt Jane. Was she going to back off? Mike shook his head. Never, he said aloud. Taking a deep breath, he shoved aside his thoughts of Aunt Jane. Smiling the lasagna's sauce and cheese, he thought about eating it. Smelling the lasagna sauce and cheese. Gosh, I'm an idiot. Smelling the lasagna sauce and cheese, he thought about eating it. But the idea immediately brought a wave of nausea. Mike stood up and looked at the half-eaten pan of lasagna. It was cold, and the cheese was starting to congeal. Gross. He was tempted to dump it in the trash, but maybe if he warmed it up, he could get Abby to eat it. Not holding his breath, but figuring he would try to feed his sister, Mike pulled the lasagna in a little microwave next to the stove. He pressed a couple buttons and turned the head towards Abby's room. Turned to head towards Abby's room. Sorry, I caught myself in the video there. Sorry. Jeez. Sorry. As Mike rotated, he saw the delinquency notice, his rage and frustration combusting. He grabbed it, balled it up, and flung it into the plastic bin under the kitchen sink. Then he kicked the bin, slammed the cabinet door, and looked at the dirty white ceiling. 3 feet above Mike's head, a spider was scurrying up a long strand of webbing. The webbing was attached to a half-completed web that stretched from grungy glass ceiling light to the corner of the room. Go, Mike said to the spider. He hoped the thing had better luck at getting his home in order that Mike was having. What? He hoped that the thing being the spider, he hoped the thing had better luck at getting his home in order that Mike was having. In order than Mike was having. He hoped the thing had better luck at getting his home in order than Mike was having. Mike doesn't have an in order home. He hopes the spider has a more in order home because Mike likes spiders and Mike is a good person. Abby loved her kidney tent. Abby loved her Heidi tent, but she also loved her desk. Too bad she couldn't fit her desk inside her Heidi tent. Drawing was much easier at her desk. Toying with the shoulder strap of her favorite red overalls, Abby looked at the array of colored pencils splayed out next to her drawing pad. Which green would be better for the big tree? Deciding, Abby picked up the darkest green pencil and began carefully sketching in the fluffy edges of a tall pine tree's branches. The squat orange metal lamp that sat on her desk shone down on the tree like sunshine, making the yellow sun Abby had already drawn above the tree even brighter looking. The golden warmth of the desk lamp made Abby's animally friends and the black-haired man and the black-haired little girl under the tree look even happier look 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 even happier than Abby wanted them to look. Even as Abby bent over the task of creating dozens of green little pine needles on the tree, she glanced at the creatures she'd drawn and at the man and girl. She'd meant for it to look like they were all playing Ring Around the Rosie, and she wasn't sure she'd pulled that off. But the big curved smile that she put on their faces made it clear they were playing and having a good time. For a second, Abby's pencil stopped moving as her feelings pushed past her concentration on drawing. If only the drawings would come true. Abby wished Mike would play with her sometimes. He used to, but lately, behind Abby, her bedroom door squeaked. She glanced over her shoulder as Mike stepped into her room. This book has done this a few times. It pretends like a descriptive paragraph gets interrupted. Like, look at this. Oh my gosh. Abby wished Mike would play with her sometimes. He used to, but lately, ... Like, this is an omnipotent storyteller. This isn't a character in the book that's getting interrupted. They can just finish their thought. Why are they writing it like this? This doesn't make any sense. Behind Abby, her bedroom door squeaked. She glanced over her shoulder as Mike stepped into her room. Mike lifted a hand in greeting, and Abby returned the gesture. Then he swiveled back around and bent closer to her drawings. She went back to sketching She went back to sketching in green pine needles. What are you drawing? Mike asked as he shuffled steps across the carpet. Trees. Abby said simply. She looked up when Mike stopped beside her white desk chair. The desk chair was what they called a ladderback chair. Mike had told her. Mike had to- the, de- the desk chair was what they called a ladderback chair. Mike had told her that. She didn't like it as much as the desk. It was hard and made her back hurt as if she sat in it for too long. That was why sometimes she drew in her tent, even though the drawings she did were never as good. Mike's arm slipped past Abby's shoulder. He tapped the man in her drawings. This good looking dude I recognize. This good looking dude I recognize. This good looking dude I recognize? This good looking dude I recognize, Mike said. He moved his fingers to one of Abby's friends. Who are these punks? Who are these punks in your drawing, loser? Abby kept working on the trees. My friends, she said. It's not done yet. Mike sighed loudly in Abby's ear. She ignored his outspoken criticism, but knew how he felt about her friends. The floor creaked as Mike took a step back away from Abby's chair. You can finish that later, he said. The words sounded sad. It's time to eat. Abby set down the green pencil and picked up a yellow one to add a little more detail to one of her friends. Not hungry, she said. Mike let out another sigh. Abby didn't feel this one, but it was louder. Don't care, Mike said. You need to eat. Let's go. Or they could, if they want to do a little bit of wordplay, instead of saying let's go, they could say lasagna. So, because it's lasagna. She's going to eat lasagna. So he could say, instead of saying let's go, he could say lasagna. So that's kind of funny. The floor creaked again, and Mike's hand closed around Abby's upper arm. He attempted to pull her from her chair. No! Abby screeched as she dropped her pencil and whirled to face her brother. The word came out like a siren from her mouth, the one small sound raising and lowering in pitch and volume. Abby twisted her arm and shook off Mike's hand. As soon as Abby pulled away from Mike, he let go of her. Abby rubbed her arm. It didn't really hurt. Mike had held her firmly, but he hadn't been rough. He was never rough. Sighing for the third time, Mike backed away from Abby and sat down on the edge of her bed. She stayed in her chair and watched him. The thin mattress sank under the weight, and the box springs let out a squeak. Mike rubbed his palms over his face, then looked at Abby as if he begged for her a favor. Abs, he said, his voice really soft. The day I'm having. Mike swallowed and shook his head. Just please come and eat some food, please. Abby looked at her brother. She thought he looked pale, and the little lines at the outside corner of his eyes were bunched up tighter than usual. She shifted her gaze to the mattress. You're sitting on my friends, Abby said. Mike snorted and stood. You know what? Do whatever you want. I don't care. Do whatever the hell you want. What? What? Swear words? They have swear words in Five Nights at Freddy's? In Five Nights at Freddy's? I don't know if I'm old enough to read this. Mike started stomping toward the door, but then he stopped. He spoke again with his back to Abby. But you should know what happens to little kids who don't eat their dinners. Mike rotated towards Abby in slow motion. He squinted at Abby and scrunched his face into what Abby thought was supposed to be a mean look, like he was trying to be one of the bad guys in a cartoon. Abby didn't feel like playing along with Mike's stupid game, so she stayed silent. She looked at him carefully to keep her face totally blank. When kids don't eat, Mike said, leaning forward, their bodies stay the same size forever. Abby shrugged and rolled her eyes. Mike waggled his finger at her, and that means they die without ever getting to ride the adult rides at the amusement park. Abby almost smiled at that, but Mike didn't deserve a smile. Whoa. Abby looked away from Mike, back to the now empty bed. She studied the spot where Mike had sat. My friends say you're an idiot, Abby told Mike, glancing toward him. Mike's face was rigid. A vein at the edge of the forehead, a vein at the edge of his forehead got bigger and looked like it was hopping up and down under his skin. What? Abby thought she could hear his teeth grinding as he turned around and headed towards her door. Just shy of the door, Mike stopped. He looked back at Abby. At least I'm real, he said. His voice was hard and unfriendly. Mike strode out of the door. Mike strode out of the room and slammed the door behind him. The kablam took a couple seconds to fade out. The yucky feeling Mike left behind lingered for longer than that. Abby looked over at the bed. He doesn't mean it, she said, quietly. He has stress. From beyond the door, Mike's bellow was muffled and distant. No, I don't, he shouted. That's funny. All right, next part of chapter 4. I'm assuming this is chapter 3 of chapter 4 of chapter 3. I'm thinking yes. Mike dropped onto the edge of his turned down bed. He sat down so hard that his bed's wood slated headboard knocked against the wall. As if in response to the thud, a dog barked in the distance. The churr crackle of the tires on the street and the purr of the engine reached in through Mike's closed window. Mike looked at his pillow. All he wanted to do was flop down and put his face in it, make like a human ostrich and block out the day. But he couldn't sleep yet. Raising his butt. That's not that funny. Raising his Raising his butt off the bed, half standing, Mike reached under his mattress and grabbed his pill bottle. Wrapping his finger around the hard, smooth plastic, he closed his eyes, savoring the momentary relief he always felt when he started his nighttime routine. Mike opened the bottle's child-proof cap and pulled out one of the small white pills, immediately popping the pill in his mouth. Immediately popping the pill in his mouth, Mike reached for a glass of water he'd put on his nightstand. He took a few sips of water, washing down the pill. Here's what I think. And this is unpopular for me. Apparently, most people do this. They put the pill in first and then they wash down the water, which is interesting. I feel like every single time I've done that, I've tasted the powder of the pill, which I don't like. But if I put the water in and then I do the pill, then it all kind of flushes down really, really fast. And I don't really understand the difference between the two. Anyway, let's wrap this up. Finally, Mike could put this day behind him. Leaning forward, Mike pushed play on the cassette player. Immediately, his bedroom was filled with peaceful forest sounds, cracks and snaps of branches being rustled by the wind. Sorry. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Then he lay down flat on his bed. Opening his eyes, Mike looked straight up above his bed, seeking past the images of the day and flicked through his mind like a herky-jerky slideshow. Mike focused on the poster taped to his ceiling. Pinning for fun? The poster's heading read, Visit Nebraska. The words popping from the paper in a bright yellow block letter font paraded across the tops of a shaggy cluster of pine trees. As Mike gazed at the trees, the slideshow in his head continued. He saw the ugly brick government building, the social worker's uneven skirt, and the paper numbered 27. He saw Raglan's smug face. He saw a series of help wanted signs and a matching series of head shakes, and he was told he wasn't right for the job. He saw Max's big eyes and Abby's dark ones. He saw the red delinquency notice and the lasagna he'd ended up throwing away because he'd microwaved it too long and because Abby had never come out of her room to eat it. Breathe, he told himself, zeroing in on the sound of the babbling brook that were coming from the cassette player. He squinted at the pine trees, putting all his attention on the ritual so he could let out the rest of his day. So, whoa, he squinted at the pine trees, putting all his attention on the ritual so he could let out let the rest of the let the rest of the day fade away. My brain autocorrects so much when I read. It's kind of awful. It's kind of awful. In a matter of seconds, Mike's mind let go of the day's impressions. His consciousness slipped into the pine trees scene, and the forest sounds grew clearer and more realistic. Mike's gaze was full on committed now. He was honed in on the forest. He was homed in. The forest was no longer a picture on a poster. The trees weren't frozen in a photograph. They were moving. The sounds didn't come from a cassette. They were coming from a real forest. The wind that Mike could hear was swaying the trees in a gentle back and forth rhythm. Mike's eyelids began to flutter. Then he felt them droop, lower and lower, closed, but the trees didn't disappear. A gentle breeze caresses the heavy branches of a cluster of pine trees. The branches shimmy back and forth in what almost looks like a choreographed dance. In front of the trees, a beam of sunshine slants downward onto the bright green wild grass. The light catches the moisture at the top of the grass blades, making them sparkle. Above the grass, caught in the sun's brilliant illumination, an orange toy plane arches through the air. A little boy's hand grips the body of the plane. The little boy looks to be about 4 years old. The boy has tousled. Sorry about this. The boy has tousled black hair and bow like lips. Garrett, a woman's voice calls out. Stay close. Garrett and his airplane whip past a picnic table and disappear from view just as a red spray of ketchup splats over a burger on a paper plate laying on the table. A smiling, dark haired man who looks like an adult version of little Garrett walks past the picnic table. The man, the man carried a couple of sleeping bags, laughing and calls out, how about some burgers with that ketchup, hun? Mike, 12 years old, and all about having fun, grins at his mom. She looks at the ketchup bottle. She looks at the ketchup bottle in her hands and winks at Mike. Everything's better swimming in ketchup, right, Mike? Right. Mike reaches for his soda and accidentally knocks over the bottle with a thunk. The soda fizzes. The soda's fizzing escape from the bottle sprays across the table. The frothy brownish liquid sounds like it's sizzling as it pools on the wood. Oops, Mike's mom says. She turns away from the table. I'm going to grab a towel. Keep an eye on your brother. Mike starts to turn around. Garrett. Mike starts to turn towards Garrett, but as soon as the edge of the frisbee nearly grazes Mike's cheek as it whistles past, Mike instinctively jumps up and jogs away from the picnic table to retrieve the bright blue disc, which was landed at the edge of the table of the family's campsite. Mike reaches the frisbee in seconds, and he bends over to pick it up. As his hand closes over the plastic rim of the disc, Mike hears the sound of a car engine revving. Mike strengthens and looks up and around. He doesn't see the car, but there's something else even more important he doesn't see. Garrett, Mike calls. Garrett is nowhere in sight. Frisbee dangling from his hand. Mike starts walking towards the far side of the campsite. His pace is casual at first, then his brother's continued absence fills him with urgency. Mike starts trotting towards the trees that line the little road that leads to the site. Garrett, Mike calls again. Mike hears the crackling ping ping that's pinging. Mike hears the crackling pinging sound of the tires churning over the gravel. Through the trees, he sees the huckling shape of a black car as it peels away from the campground. Mike breaks into a full-out run. Garrett? Mike's shouts is shrill and piercing. Mike is in the trees now. The long pine needles poke his face. The branches slap at him. It feels like they're trying to grab him. Fallen twigs and pine cones crackle under Mike's feet. His nostrils are filled with the sharp smell of pine resin and the moist scent of the ground's soft soil. Mike bursts out of the trees just in time to see the black car pick up speed. The car's at least 50 feet past Mike. It's zooming away. Mike, panting hard, looked towards the back of the car. His heart feels like it's being twisted in his chest, and he looks at the car's rear window. Garrett, Mike gasps. Garrett's pale, white-eyed face looks back at Mike through the window. Clutching his orange airplane, Garrett puts a hand on the glass. Garrett's eyes are filled with tears. His mouth is wide open, calling out. It's not what happened in the movie, but it's got to be one of the dumbest things. This brother is getting kidnapped, right? Picture this in your mind. No, you don't have to picture it. I'll share it with you. I'll just share the image with you. Okay. So it's Garrett, right? And he's in the back of the truck, and he's being kidnapped. But he's looking through the window, and he's like this. Like he doesn't give a crap about it. He's just like, that's what he's like. So that's cool. Five Nights at Freddy's. Oh my lord. Garrett's eyes are filled with tears, his mouth wide open, calling out. Mike opens his mouth too. He starts letting out a scream. The beep, beep, beep of Mike's alarm felt like a lasso that kinched up around him and yanked him out of sleep. Pulling a face, Mike reached for his alarm. Today, his palm managed to find the top of the alarm. As soon as the beeping stopped, Mike smoothly went through his morning routine. Cassette player off, rewind, pills under the mattress, push-ups. Mike's head didn't hurt so much this morning, but that didn't mean he felt any better. He wouldn't feel better until he could fix things. And after 13 years of trying, he was starting to think that would never happen. All right. Yeah, chapter 5 is long. It's pretty long. And it's not really something I like in the movie all too much. I mean, Doug is in it. We love Doug. Doug is great. However, the ant is also in it. I don't really like that ant character. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm actually William Afton. And I'm actually Springtrap. And I'm actually gonna eat or kill you. I'm actually gonna eat you. So this is the end for you.